I think they're gorgeous. I guess I'm a little biased, but I think most of you would agree. There's a tremendous amount of work in these. They look beautiful. I remember hearing over the radio a couple times at competition from last year's car, oh, there's the beautiful purple car. I didn't hear that about any of the other ones, so we have good-looking cars anyway, and these are even better. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the technical highlights of these cars, because they are different between each other, of course, and also to last year's car. First, mention the aerodynamics package. We do have a drag reduction system, so the two flaps in the rear actually pivot down. The driver can either control it with a button, or the ECU can take over and control it automatically. So we lose drag on a long straightaway, so we kind of make up some of the penalties of having a large wing on a car with a fairly small engine. So that's one of our big additions this year. And it's also unsprung. So what that means is that instead of all of the aero loads going into the car body itself, and then having to go through the suspension and through all the linkages down to the ground, instead of that, all of the downforce generated by the wings goes straight to the uprights and to the tires. So you can generate the force on the tires, which is what lets you accelerate faster side to side. It lets you generate that without having to sacrifice as many other things you would normally have to do. So those are two huge projects. There's only a couple teams in the world that have run an unsprung. There's only a few that have done drag reduction, and we do both. So that is our aerodynamics package. Here's the chassis. It used the same molds as last year, but the beautiful thing about composites are that you can have something that looks like it's the same shape, but is completely different inside. We did a lot of analysis trying to find out where we could save weight, because there's layers and layers of carbon in here. You don't necessarily need all of that everywhere. So we did a lot of analysis to try to figure out where we could remove that carbon, and other tricks we could do. There's little hard points everywhere that the suspension mounts, where it's a bit stronger because there's a lot of force right in that one spot. We tried a whole bunch of different methods of doing those, different materials, and I think overall we saved just around 10 pounds on the chassis alone. So that's a huge weight savings. I think the heaviest part of it now is the roll hoop, which have to have there. They specify thicknesses and sizes, so that's a 10-pound penalty we can't do anything about, but the chassis is also much lighter. This one is always hard to render on screen because the driver control spans the whole car. We have everything from the pedals, which are very important for the driver to be able to accurately drive the car. We spend a lot of time kind of tweaking those, taking feedback of what the drivers liked, what they didn't like, and made changes there. Then there's the steering wheel, which is a very intimate part because you're touching that the entire time. All of your steering input goes into that. Any buttons you want to press, it all needs to be right there and natural for the driver to use. So we spent a lot of time doing that as well. We revised all of our paddle shift paddles and kind of the interface for that. And we also have a new dash on the car. We thought about it a long time, what the drivers could actually use and what they would just be a distraction. And so it has a lot more information on it than in the past, but it's not a color touchscreen because if you're staring at that, you're not driving as fast as you possibly could. So a lot of improvements there. And then the shift system, we have improved shift system this year. We spent a lot of time kind of looking into ways we could make it better, ways we could make it lighter. And so we made a bunch of changes, and it's been on the car the entire time it's been driving, and the drivers love it because you can shift in places you've never been able to shift before. Instead of having to take your hands off the wheel in the middle of a long corner wall braking, you can keep your hands there and just shift without having to think about it. So that is driver controls. The drivetrain itself is fairly similar to last year. We're still using the same differential. It's the lightest one we can get by a long shot. A lot of the parts are similar, but we spent a lot of time trying to figure out what parts we didn't need or how much of those parts we didn't need. So we saved a couple pounds of weight just out of the drivetrain, which is very impressive. It's not a very heavy system. I think it's a little over 10 pounds by itself. So there's not a whole lot of weight to lose, but we spent a lot of time going through and making sure that every little piece of it was serviceable, that it was a lot lighter, and would also put up with a very thumpy single-cylinder engine. And then, of course, there's the engine package itself. Like I said, that's kind of my first team when I joined long ago, so I've always had an affinity for it. We've done a lot of work. Last year was our first year on this motor, so we didn't want to do too many changes with it. just for the risk of not being able to finish endurance or something. We now feel that we're comfortable enough with the engine that we can start to make actual changes. So we've tested everything from high compression pistons to big bore kits, intake and exhaust cams, a couple different ones. Doing a lot of that kind of testing, and that's really paid off. I think we're making, like I said, about 7 more horsepower, which is a lot, going from 53 to 70 or 53 to 60 horsepower. You can really feel that while driving. The car is very fast. We've been driving this car for several weeks now, so I don't think we've done that in an unveiling before, having a driving car. So there's the engine package. Some of it's fairly similar. It has an intake and it has an exhaust. The rest of it changed. So we have a new fuel system. We did our own pulse width modulation because we had EEs around for the electric car. We had them design up some stuff for us, and just made everything a lot more cleanly packaged. Everything's a lot lighter. And here's suspension. Like Evan said, it goes all the way across the car. There are the most parts in the system out of any, and they're also very challenging. So there are very few that if you broke, wouldn't cause a lot of problems. So we went through, and early in the year we decided that our load cases were a little bit off, I guess you could say, because there are a lot of cars out there that were extremely light, and some of them broke, but some of them didn't. Our cars were still a little bit heavier, so we looked at that and said, I bet we can save some weight, and we changed kind of what the loads that we think we'll see on track would be. We did that. We have data from the tires, we have our track testing, we have strain gauges all over the car, accelerometers, sensors everywhere. We took all of that and looked at it for a couple months and tried to figure out exactly what our car needed to support. If you can build a car that's really heavy and super reliable, but it's also maybe not so fast. You can build a really light car that brakes. We were trying to find the happy medium in there. So I don't remember exactly how much weight we saved overall, but there were a couple parts. I think the hub saved a pound a piece. Huge weight savings all over the system. So that's a lot of fun, and you can feel it when you drive, the weight difference in the whole car. So there is our combustion guard. Looks a lot like the one down there. And it's tons of modeling, tons of work all year round. But like I said, we have another car as well. This presented quite a few challenges. We'd never done an electric car before. I think the most we had ever had was 2 electrical engineers on the team. 2 electrical engineers playing with high voltage and high current and a whole bunch of new parts. Isn't really the safest or best way to go, so we brought on a bunch of electrical engineers to help with the integration of it and the design of it. We have a lithium-ion battery pack, and it has about 6 kilowatt hours, which might not mean a whole lot to you, but put it in more scary terms, I guess you could say. You can power like a block of a city street for maybe a couple seconds, but that's a lot of power, and you're sitting right on top of it. So there are, I think, 8 different safety systems that monitor every aspect of the car. It monitors the charge of the cells, the temperature of the cells, voltages, currents, if there's an insulation fault, if the driver hits something, any of those kind of things. There's the anti-brake and throttle pedal safety system. Don't know where they would have gotten that idea from, but that's in there as well. So there's a lot of systems that go to make this as safe as we possibly can. And it's kind of a comparison. I won't say I thought electric cars were silly, because that would be way too far, but I never thought I would see the team building one until in Germany, when we saw how fast those cars were. They were actually beating a lot of the combustion cars around the courses. I thought, that's really cool. We need to get on board with that. One of the things that makes it faster is that the limits that they impose through the rules are actually a little bit more lenient. They allow us to have a maximum of 120 horsepower, which on a 400-pound car is a lot. So that's going to be a lot of fun. We spent a lot of time trying to find, because this was an iterative year, we didn't have the resources or the money to build a completely different electric car. So if you notice, the chassis looks very similar. The suspension is very similar. That also posed unique restrictions, because we can't fit an enormous battery pack in there. We can't fit just any inverter that we want. We had to spend a lot of time trying to find things that were light enough and also small enough to fit in there. So the motor that we have, the inverter, those are the smallest ones we've been able to find that achieve what we needed it to do. So it's a very complicated system, and we're looking forward to driving that very soon. And here's that car as it sits there as well. Like I said, these cars, they're our pride, they're our joy. Spend a lot of time with them. There's many all-nighters through everything from like new members, freshmen, all the way up through leads and directors. There's all-nighters, there's blood, sweat, and tears, literally for all of those, going into making these two cars. And we're extremely proud to have both of them sitting here in front of you tonight with our first double unveiling. And there's a couple things I want to announce. After this, we will have kind of a sponsor social down in our shop area, so we'll lead you down as we filter out. And I would also like to take an opportunity now to bring down some of our sponsors for our usual picture. So if you have contributed to our team in any way, either a corporate sponsor or family or personal sponsor, please make your way down to the stage and we will take your picture with the cars. I know there's a bunch of you out there. So. And everyone else, give them a hand, please. While they're up there and getting their pictures taken, I would just like everyone to give them another round of applause. I would also like to especially thank Fremont Brewing, who will be donating beverages for our sponsor social afterwards. So I'd also like to thank them especially. Almost. Okay, thank you very much. And at this point, I'd like to invite everyone to come down and take a look at the cars. Just to remind you, they are somewhat fragile. They are meant to handle our loads during, driving, so don't step on things of that nature. So come down, enjoy the cars, and talk to our members.